eagerly anticipating this record. And speaking of anticipated records, we are moving on to our main topic of the day, which is, oh boy, if you can believe it, the Indieheads podcast will be discussing Japanese Breakfast's second full-length album, Soft Sounds from Another Planet, released July 14th on the Dead Oceans record label. Just throwing it out there that Psychopomp, released in 2016, was the unanimous, decided album of the year from the Indieheads podcast. Our clout went through the roof. We are notoriously, big fans of this album. We have received attention from Michelle herself multiple times. We did a live let's plug this content. Jeremiah and I did a live first listen and raw reaction on Periscope, which you can find on the Indieheads podcast Twitter. Yeah, signed management, and Michelle found it and somehow retweeted it, which is very strange because Kyle told us he did not send it to her, so she wasn't tagged and Japanese Breakfast wasn't mentioned, so
something is going on.
Something is afoot. Witchcraft
maybe it's because Maddie. Okay, hold on. I have the look. So when Maddie announced her AMA, he was like, Psychopomp was very acclaimed, most notably by the Indieheads podcast, that is their album of the year for 2016. What if she was like, she looked up the Indieheads podcast and looked at our Twitter account and just so happened to be time to see that we were standing the shit out of it, but also that
it's the best album of all time.
Yeah, but also people like me and AJ, who she'd seen on Twitter, were the people who were there. Because I made that post about getting the pre-order, and so I was in it, and Kasha was in it, and then Kasha and I were in the video, so she was like, "Oh shit!"
It's all connected. It's all connected. So really don't know where to begin here, just because this album is very important, very special, easily one of our most anticipated albums of the year. And the weird thing is, I was thinking about this too, even when Psychopomp had just come out, she made it very obvious that hey, the next album is coming next year. It's going to be the next Loveless. It's going to be also the best album of all time. Whereas Psychopomp was Funeral 2.0, this was going to rip us into the world of shoegaze and just combine every genre of all time into what is, I believe, a masterpiece.
I think we're all kind of in agreement, actually.
I think I have not seen anyone in the Skype chat, on Indieheads, on Hip Hop Heads, on Twitter, on every major publication. I have not seen one bad take on, or someone saying this album is anything less than great. If there is out there, point it to me. If it's you listening to this podcast, just fuck off. I don't care. But I think I'll just start with this. I think in every way, in every single facet, it is an undeniable, objective improvement over Psychopomp. Psychopomp is such a personally special, resonant, important album for that aspect of just discovery, unexpected. This is incredible. That I don't think it will replace it in the pantheon of my favorite albums of all time, which Psychopomp just continues to climb that list the further we get away from release. But I do think that Soft Sounds from Another Planet is objectively better in every way. The sophomore slump has been defeated, thrown out. I never want to hear that phrase again.
Sophomore slump canceled.
The sophomore slump as a concept has been canceled, and the culprit, the murderer, is Michelle's honor of Japanese Breakfast. Guys, folks, listeners, the world at large, where do we start with this album? How do we begin? Should we just walk through track by track? Because that's how I have my notes.
We should read who has the booklet on them? They should read the intro.
Oh, yeah, read the intro.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, you should do that.
I have the booklet with me. It's going to be long. It's a very long note.
Yes.
That's
okay. We're okay taking up to 5 minutes to do this?
Yeah.
Okay. So here it is. This letter is signed March 12th, 2017. Recent. Notable. All right. Originally, this record was going to be titled Here Come the Tubular Bells. Tubular bells were made to sound like church bells. They're played by hitting grated tubes with a mallet. You can hear them at the end of the record and in the outro of Till Death. A lot of these songs are about marriage, and for a time, that title seemed funny and fitting to me because it felt inherently sarcastic, like heralding a finale guaranteed to end with a thud. 2.5 years ago, by the time this comes out, we threw a wedding in my parents' backyard. I tried on my dress for the first time in my mother's hospital room. She was dying of cancer, and for some reason this felt like the right thing to do. Really go out with a bang. Do something happy to distract us and make up for all the things that happen when a horrible disease enters your life. We planned the wedding in 3 weeks, just in time for her to see it. She went into a coma just days after the ceremony, and a week after that, she died. Over the course of this month, I recited both a wedding vow and a eulogy. I wore a new ring on my left hand, and soon after, I took the token of 35 years of my parents' marriage on my right. I wrote about this heavy hand before in Rugged Country. I wrote most of Psychopomp a few months after this in a cottage at the bottom of 5 acres of land in Eugene, Oregon. It felt like a small, quiet way to process. I had no intention of touring on it or for anyone to pay any notice. I'd spent 3 years before in a band that never quite took off and had finally decided to put away that ambition. Unexpectedly, with Psychopomp's release, I experienced some small success as an artist for the first time. I signed to the same label as an artist I'd silently envied for years. I won a magazine contest. I traveled the world. I played quote-unquote big rooms. I felt very empty. It felt comically sad that this came on the heels of a record I thought would be my last, and that the one person I'd always wanted to impress was gone. Between my new marriage and my work, it felt like every day should unfold in great celebration. I'd filled my life with things that brought me great joy and fulfillment, but they passed through a clouded lens of mourning. I spent most of last year with my head down. A lot of these songs are about trudging from day to day, being on the road away from someone you love, feeling shut off, trying to train the heart to endure, the body to push past trauma. I changed the title to Soft Sounds from Another Planet because I often found myself dissociating from reality and retreating into science fiction during this time. I became obsessed with the Mars One project and often envisioned myself as a robot or free-floating in space. I provoked emotional distance and tried to enter a sort of self-induced amnesia. I tried to love quietly and move forward and beyond. I tried to listen. I mean, that's got to be one of the best liner notes things I've ever read.
Did Jay Brecky just say that she is actually the machine and machinist? Is that the implication?
There's a duality to it. It's about like falling in love with a machine, but imagining the self in both ways. I think that note, that was my first time hearing it, and like obviously a lot of that stuff has been known, especially to like hardcore Japanese breakfast fans, which I think all of us are here. But it's just so like it just so cements how holistic Michelle is as an artist, how everything is kind of this vision that is so consistent and just like powerful, and like the songs, every Japanese breakfast song is kind of like hopped around these different genres and melding, but I think it's like that consistency that keeps it very clear and distinct from everything else. It's just like, this is a Japanese breakfast song, this is what this art is, and this is why it's so important. I think certainly has become one of my favorite bands of all time with these last two records, and just like preserving that notion of breakthrough success in an industry where maybe that doesn't happen anymore, and the idea that like I had not known that Psychopomp was like intended to be like her kind of last musical release, and it's just that's why that's part of the reason why Psychopomp I think was so special to us, is that it had kind of come out of nowhere and had this built-in history, this kind of rich personal sincerity and genuineness that is sort of missing from a lot of major releases these days, and that's why I think that we really celebrated it so hard, and we certainly memed, we certainly threw that content out there, but it was all with the purpose of like, people should be listening to this music because it's very good, it's enjoyable, and it's also very, very
it wasn't just
important.
For the clout.
It was not just for the clout or the upvotes or the recognition.
For the album.
It was for the album. Everything we did for Psychopomp was to get people to listen to it, and now people are listening to it, and we have this follow up here that is incredible in every way. Man,
and she's blowing up too.
Yeah, she's absolutely blowing up. I mean,
the only thing that could have made her blown up more is if Pitchfork.com decided not to
just
be
slap the best new music on there.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't. That's
They're
actually just such a
cowards. They're
tactical
cowards.
error. They have nothing to lose by giving her best new music.
They did
Oh,
give
the
it.
revision is going to come hard at the end of the decade for sure.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
They did give it
For
the best
sure.
score of all time, the 8.0, if
That's
I'm
True.
remembering correctly, which you cannot beat. Before we like get into, I think we should just go track by track through it and kind of share our thoughts. The thing that like teased the album in that official press release was that less of a concept album about space exploration. It was described so much as it is a moved board come to life over the course of 12 tracks. Michelle Zauner explores a sonic landscape of her own design, one that's big enough to contain all of her influences. And I think like her voice being the consistent driving force in this album was something that I was like actively thinking about while I was listening, and that was the thing that was sticking out, is that it goes a lot of places, and it's this like cosmically influenced record that like is also just very much about one-on-one relationships in a lot of ways, and there's so many themes that we're gonna try and get into here, but
This album is like really about kind of what it means to love someone and what it means to be hurt by that person and to hurt that person. Like that's kind of what a lot of the tracks seem to focus on, and it's just
There's
a really
something-
like real representation about that, and it has so much
I think the
personality
hurt-
and life to
I
it.
think actually the hurt lies. What I've been noticing is that the hurt doesn't lie necessarily in the present and like what they've done to each other, but it all lies in the past, especially
Yeah.
with like Roadhead and with 12 Steps, which we can get to later when we get to those songs. But it's not about like her marriage being like tumultuous and terrible. It's about how do you grapple with the things that you did before you got married. Like 12 Steps. Okay, literally the story behind 12 Steps is that she went to a bar with her then like someone who she was like seeing, and then she met her husband, and she was like, "Fuck, well,
See ya.
this is my life. I gotta
Yeah.
go. Sorry." And that story is kind of cute, but it's also just like devastating for every single party involved.
Yeah.
There's no one feels good about that.
It's apparent too in the lyrics of 12 Steps
Yeah,
that like
and in just the song and just the tension and just like, I think her voice. I maintain that 12 Steps is the most just visceral and powerful song. It's kind of like the Rugged Country of Soft Sounds, in that it's just her voice. I mean, it's definitely the most intense. She just freaks out on that track. And
I find this funny just because even like reading through the lyrics when I was doing my last listen for this album, these are the notes I took for 12 Steps, which we're now talking about as like the most just emotionally devastating song on the album. I have, this is a cute little ditty with raucous guitars and possibly the most fun moment on the album. Question
Oh,
mark.
it definitely is. It's definitely the best. Like it's definitely
As
a
a
double-edged
song.
sword. I only realized today how fucked up it was.
It's the
because,
most
like,
it's the most psychopomp song on the album, where psychopomp was like,
Actually,
these
it's the
songs are fun and dancey, but also
Yeah.
just like, oh Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because like it's a really interesting song, and I think she addresses it perfectly, especially since like it's okay. So let's look at it from all sides. For the person she left, like you just got left. Like that sucks. Like
It's
There's
kind of
no-
like in the worst possible way too. Like
for her husband, it's like, well, fuck. Like
Like, that's on you, buddy.
you probably had sex with that person, and like, yeah, you chose me, but like, damn, that kind of sucks. And Michelle's like, fucking hell, what have I done? You know, it's like, and so the entire song is just she's just asking for forgiveness. So when she says like the "I don't blame you," she's hoping that it's from the perspective of both partners, because it's like from the person she left, it's like, I don't blame you. Like it's a little bit lonelier, yeah, but like, you know, you took your chance at love, and you saw your chance at love, and you took it. And then from her husband, she's just like, I mean, please don't blame me for this. Please don't resent me, you know, because that's such an easy thing to find.
There's
to find pain in, is just the people before, and so that's a lot of what, like a lot of the Japanese Breakfast and Little Big League stuff. Like one of Michelle Zauner's signature styles in songwriting is just this really interesting visceral, kind of grotesque approach to sexuality. So, for example, giving Roadhead on a Turnpike exit, like Everybody Wants to Love You, songs like that, like Woman That Loves
Jane
You.
Come, yeah.
Boyish, yeah, Jane Come. I was thinking, when I said boyish, I was thinking like Little Big League Boyish, but I realized it's like
Little Big League Boyish is pretty.
Little Big League. There's My Very Own You, and she's like, I want to like find a place where no one else has been and like claim it as my own. You're like, oh fuck.
There's a song on American Sound called Beating Off too that like hasn't been.
It's also Pure Hand Job.
Yeah.
Which is, anyways. So this the 777 went the line, which is which is the most fuck me up moment.
Oh no, don't do it.
She says, I love a man in uniform because he loves me like a slot machine. You're like, woo! So throughout her music, just this really grotesque sexuality has permeated. And to me, a lot of this album is trying to reconcile both that personal past, but also that artistic past with her future and who she wants to be and how she wants to be. Like,
I think the way we've started off this discussion like highlights probably what's the most like astounding thing about this record for me is that all of us like have a different thing that we're reading into this album. Everyone reads like a different core theme of this record, and yet they're all like equally valid. I think it's such a testament to her like craftsmanship as a lyricist that she is able to talk about like such specific things in a way that is not alienating at all in this record. And that's where I was really not expecting to be blown away by this record, because like Psychopomp for me, I love that album, but I said this in one of the chats a couple days ago, is like Psychopomp, I've never been through anything like that. It was like having a really compelling short story read to me, and I empathized with it, but it wasn't, necessarily something I related to as in like, oh yeah, I've been there. It was almost like, oh wow, I've never been there. I can't believe you're making me feel this.
Yeah.
Whereas Soft Sounds, like I feel like every song on this album is just a page from my diary. Like every song speaks to like something that I personally have been through in the last year, and it's amazing that she's able to do that and write in a way that connects with people so personally without negating anyone else's interpretation of that song. Like that's so hard to do with lyrics, and it's amazing that she pulls it off here consistently.
There's a consistent theme of like self reconciliation, and I think some of it that's so special is a lot of it is pointed directly at the I'm going to say fallout, but not meaning fallout of the release of Psychopomp and kind of what came after that. I think parts of Diving Woman and The Closer, This House, are about like her experiences touring and this idea of a guilt of touring and being like you're denying parts of your culture, you're denying important people in your immediate friends and family, like by being away on tour, being a successful artist, being a celebrated artist, you're like not being there for people that are important to you. And even though it's great and it's this thing you've always wanted, there's always this idea of, at least like naggingly in the back of the head of the artist, at least of just like, is this selfish? Like even if these lyrics are resonating with so many people, there's that idea of just kind of like grappling with all of this duality. And I think it goes back to what Jeremiah was talking about on 12 Steps, how like all of these perspectives are coming in from these different points. It's just like there is no perfect answer is what I'm taking away from Soft Sounds from Another Planet. There is no, you will never make everyone happy. You will never be holistically happy. You may never stop searching for like this kind of happiness. And what as Lily was saying, what I kind of take from Soft Sounds and Another Planet is like there are just kind of moments and things and people that we need to latch onto it and make concrete and make objective, and sort of that is what defines the kind of human existence. And I know it's a bold thing to say that that's what this album is about, but this album is really just sort of about like learning to love and learning to make kind of like love important to you in the way that it can only be important to you, and hoping that in doing so you might find someone who sort of is compatible and feels the same way. It's a really heady, like kind of like conceptual album, because it's all over the place in moments in time and moments in space of just like a personal experience from sort of all fronts. And again, like Lily was saying, these lyrics I think should speak to everyone in some way, and everyone's going to resonate with something differently, just in the way they're written. And they're not ambiguous, because they're certainly pointedly specific. And listening to Michelle talk about them, as I have that NPR read through, is absolutely wonderful, and I would recommend everyone, even if you like the album, even if you love the album, to kind of read through that, because you'll get another perspective on a lot of these songs that just like makes everything click. And I think again, even just like Psychopomp had continued to grow and impress me as time went on. I feel like this album will only grow more impressive in just how special it becomes, because there certainly isn't a weak song on here. I would say there isn't a weak moment on here. It's again. Just like on Psychopomp, spaced perfectly, paced perfectly. I wouldn't change any of the track listing. The interludes do what they need to do. One thing I did want to mention, though, that Will had brought up earlier, friend of the podcast, Will for Thrill, had mentioned that the singles he thought were all poor choices to represent the album overall. And I do think I agree with him there. It's not that they're bad songs, but just like sort of, it did set up like that. That's why maybe the first listen was so like, oh man, like this is some shit right here, because like the singles are the kind of fun songs. I think they tease this like
I disagree, but continue what you're saying.
Well, I think that Jeremiah and I had this experience when we saw her open for Slow Dive in May, hearing Diving Woman and Body is a Blade for the first time. I think those are like would have been perfect representers contained in themselves.
I think Diving Woman would have been. I think I'm glad she didn't release Diving Woman as a single, because that would have been like a Sparks by Beach House thing where people were like, "What? What? There's a saxophone. Where's my shoegaze?" You're like, shoegaze. Easy, guys.
Let's get back into some structure here and just go all in on Diving Woman. I mean, Jesus Christ, this is the most accomplished thing she's done by far. Expansive, almost 7 minutes long. Those guitars, that saxophone, like you were mentioning, like this song is just an incredible, encompassing like introduction to the album. It's irresponsible the way this album starts with Diving Woman, and that she names drops Desire Lines by Deer Hunter as like a direct sonic inspiration for the song. It's just like, of course you hear it, but just like, oh my god, this song
literally, it's a fourth of the length of Psychopomp.
That's true.
That's what I really love about it, is the way this song announces itself and announces the album as like this is not Psychopomp. Like, this is something else.
She's like, yeah, I know that I made a 26-minute masterpiece. I know that it's 26 minutes long. Thank you. I'm aware. But also,
I can also make like a 7-minute banger.
And you're like, woo! And the thing is, it is a banger. And she stops singing like 3 minutes in, and it just keeps your attention fully. It's just like wrapped, you know. And it is a similar chord progression to Heft, I noticed, but I think in like I don't know anything about music, but it's just legit. And the drums are like, and you're like, ah!
Can we talk about the warbly synth noise at the very beginning?
Oh, absolutely.
Because what a fucking like introduction, like. It's like 1,000 horns, but just like one like little synth note.
Yeah.
And I think the way this kicks the album off lyrically too is so on point. I think the song particularly highlights the like precision there are to her lyrics and how she is able to embed so much meaning in that. Like just the first line, "I want to be a woman of regimen," is so loaded on so many levels, and that she's able to convey that layer of that level of complexity so simply, and then like also embed it within like this gorgeous instrumentation. It's just it's a really breathtaking opener.
Yeah, I think this is one of like the later songs. I'm trying to remember like from what I've heard, the various pieces I've heard. This is one of like the last or like most recently written songs that appears on the album.
That makes sense.
It goes back to what I was talking about how it's sort of a reflection of like the touring process, and there's a callback to like it's about Korean diving women, and that's what like the Woman of Regimen line means.
It's also about the album Divers by Joanna.
By Joanna, like if you're gonna go there, it's just like unbelievable.
But also as a start for the album, just the entire like image, the entire metaphor of a diving woman is, I think you might have mentioned it, I might have been zoning out, and you might have said this already, but it's just a perfectly apt metaphor for the entire album. It's a perfectly apt metaphor for just diving, you know, and just disassociating, just trying to hold your breath, trying to survive, trying to make something out of nothing, you know, and it's like...
Yeah, the end, like the last lines.
Sure,
and... To me, it kind of touches on themes that are discussed later. Like, I can't remember which song, but oh Jesus, I'm sorry. Hang on.
It's the police
I
calling. They say
cannot-
stop
Alright,
talking about
I'll
this
be right
10 minutes on
back.
album. Okay. So Roadhead has a great video.
I think Roadhead is a perfect single, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think Roadhead as a single it's just as a song, it and Diving Woman as a 1-2 punch.
Oh my god.
Because I was listening to it while mowing the lawn today, and it was starting to get a little bit drizzly. And I mean, okay, Roadhead and Diving Woman are both songs you can just melt into. But so Diving Woman kind of sets the stage, and then Roadhead immediately takes you to the perverse, like, sexual, just terribly sad, like, destructive, just tumultuous world of the Japanese breakfast, like, of just the way she approaches her sexuality, just her canon, yeah. And just everything about that song, I think that's a perfect song. I think that's
Roadhead's perfect.
Roadhead caught me so off guard because I had, like, as I generally do, like, not listen to any of the singles beyond Machinist. I just, like, knew that wasn't going to be the way for me to, like, get the best experience of that album. So, like, I didn't, like, Diving Woman didn't really wow me on first listen just because I'd heard snippets of it, like, throughout the weekend at Pitchfork. You know, people were listening to the album and stuff, and so, like, I knew what was coming with that. I did not see Roadhead coming at all. So, like, I was listening to that on the plane on the way back, and it just, like, completely floored me. Like, within the first 10 seconds, my jaw had just dropped that this song existed, and that, like, the lyrics in this song are embedded with so much pain and conflict and this sense of, like, abandonment and disconnect from one's body and, like, utilization of one's own sexuality. And there's this amazing fragility and smallness about it as well. It's just I've never heard a song capture that combination of emotions before, but that's, like, a combination I know so intimately. And so to just, like, be able to hear that and realize, oh, I've never heard a song do this before, was, like, it was a really profoundly revelatory experience for me. And, like, I'll talk a little bit more about my first listening experience this album later, but I mean, yeah, Roadhead may already be one of the best songs I've ever heard. I think it's the best thing she's done. I cannot sing that song's praises enough. I've just been listening to it on repeat over and over, just astounded at what it accomplishes in such a compact span.
Hearing how it has changed from the American Sound release in, like, 2014 too is super interesting because it's less than a minute long there, and it's basically just sort of, like, the same guitar riff and, like, a very stripped down version of the song, and hearing it kind of, like, blown out here as she does with a lot of her music is super interesting to hear, kind of like the quote unquote finalized version of this. We then get Machinist, which was the lead single, and a lot of people were like, I don't like this. I don't know what this is.
Okay,
There's auto tune. What fools?
The thing with the singles is that as a lead up to the album, as single, if this was a conventional album rollout, the singles would not make sense. But coming from the realm of Japanese breakfast, the singles make complete sense. Because Machinist had been a song that she was touring. It was the Robots Get the Suck song. We were like, yo,
when is this robot fucking song coming out? When is this fucking robot fucking song?
We saw the track listing. When she released the track listing, we saw that Boyish was on it. And people were like, Boyish and Roadhead, because we knew Roadhead was on it too. So we're like, Boyish? What? And then she released Boyish as a single, and that was a complete just flip of it on its head.
I guess what I do like about the singles is that it didn't spoil any of the surprises.
Exactly. And it was sort of, it's hard to say fan service because obviously, like, there's very
specifically tailored to, like, me and Jeremiah.
Like us. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like fan service to us. So she released Boyish, and Boyish was a complete flipped. It just completely flips the Little Big League song on its head. Just completely. The only thing that's, like, constant is, like, the lyrics and, like, the chorus being just the most visceral, just like, wow! Like, I can't get you off my mind. I can't get you off in general. Like, whoa!
That is one of the most divine, like, perfect fillets of a single line of a song I've ever heard. How she must have written that and just been like, you're goddamn right, I just did that.
Yeah, exactly.
How has no one ever come up with, like,
are we already on Boyish?
Yeah.
No,
we're just
really.
talking about the singles.
Okay.
We have it.
It's like, it definitely sticks out as the weird one, the kind of, like, fun.
But it was super important to be released as the single. Like, to be released, it was just so important because it because not only does it just demonstrate the fact like I am very far away from Psychopomp. Like it's obviously the furthest she goes. The furthest the farthest she goes is Machinist in just terms of like crazy, because there's a spoken word intro, there's auto tune, there's like a dance beat, there's a saxophone outro. You're like, okay, like and as a way of hyping, it was just I think it was a great single for me.
I
As
agree.
a Japanese breakfast fan who was coming in, was very, very excited, and who was like, had already like immersed myself in the mythology, which I may have had a part in creating. You know, it's like I'm like, yeah, robots get to suck. You know, like yeah. But of course, the song, like, okay, so it was robots get to suck when we saw it live, because
it's so wild live. It's such a
she's like, the song's about falling in love with a robot. You're like, yeah.
You're like, I'm into it. I'm interested.
And then you hear it, like, you listen to it like 400 times, and you're like, huh, this song's kind of dark. this is kind of fucked up.
It gives you pause to go.
And then
perhaps being in love with a robot isn't a good thing.
You listen to it back to back with Roadhead, where she's giving Roadhead to a lover in like a relationship which is quickly breaking down and becoming toxic as like a latch-ditch sexual effort. And then the very next thing in Machinist is, I don't know how it happened. Was it always this way, or could I just not see it? And you're like, whoa.
It's been done.
Yeah, and I think Machinist, I think someone made the point that like it sounded like Machinist, that she was the machine in Machinist. And I think it's really important to listen to Machinist not necessarily as like a confessional song, but as like a metaphor, you know, because it is just about it's just about connection and about like it's and a lack of connection and like maybe Stockholm syndrome and just, you know, and it's just really fucked up and sad. And a lot of the, you know, in the music and the chorus and like the saxophone, it's all this sort of escapist, you know. The song itself is almost escapism in this really shadowy, dark, like depressing box where she's or where the person, where the, in this case, so in the metaphor, it's the woman and the machine, where the woman is just, I mean, there's just no, it's just this dark, sad situation, and she turns it into a dance party. I think it's really another testament to her emotional reach, and also just her craft. And also, it's very important that she ends it with a sax solo, because I was in the bathroom when the song came out, and I was sitting on the toilet watching the video, and then the sax solo came on. I was like, ah! I literally screamed and started slapping the sink, and my suite mates were like, oh shit, Jeremiah fell down in the shower. You okay, Jeremiah? I was like, there's a sax solo! They're like, okay, jeez.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, but I literally fell off the toilet. I was like, what the fuck? But yeah, so, and then of course, this brings us briefly to Till Death for a second, which is that it's kind of fucked up how Michelle Zauner shouted out the two best albums of 2011, Hurry Up We're Dreaming and Kaput, with outros on those songs, because obviously you got the Midnight City style saxophone on Machinist, and then you have the Kaputzi like horns and like air and like and woodwinds like on Till Death. And I just think that's, you know what? Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for Michelle respects artistry, is what we're
folks.
talking about.
He may be reaching. He may be reaching. Folks, let's try and keep you in control here.
All right, who wants to? All right, I think this might be a reach. He's
going.
But
for it.
I'm just saying that Michelle Zauner's favorite line on Kaput, probably the one where he says, "You terrify the land, you are pestle and mortar." Right? Pestle and mortar. You know what else is kind of like pestle and mortar?
What is?
Amish butter when you churn it. Whoa! We're through the looking glass here, people.
We are officially too far gone. So from Machinist, we get Planetary Ambience, which she described as the sounds of two satellites talking to each other. And I heard that and I said, "Yep, that's what that is." It's a great.
Yeah, it's very just lovely.
Yeah, like that's what it is. That is exactly what it is.
On interludes so far, because obviously we haven't gotten to. We don't know if he's, because in terms the viewers don't know if she's 4 for 4. We know.
We know the answer.
We're only 3 for 3 so far in the cast.
Then we get we get to the first sort of surprise of the album, because on my first listen, this was like
This is the only one that we didn't.
Yeah, this was unknown territory. We had officially crossed the threshold of
And it
songs.
starts her like heavily distorted and like I was like, huh.
And it's like really kind of, an affecting intro with what she's talking about, and then
it turns into a slow dance.
It shifts. This is where I have written in my notes, "Wow!" with a gasping face made out of exclamation points, because the way it like just sort of explodes is mind blowing. It's that thing she does frequently where like songs will just change direction with no warning whatsoever, just go to a completely different place, and you're like, I am along for the ride and I am into whatever this is, because it turns into this sort of like pop ballad. A little bit of the Roy Orbison stuff from Boyish comes back, but just like when she kind of like name drops or does like the name of the album in there, In Search of a Soft Sound from Another Planet. I'm like, yup, absolutely. And it's again just like the core themes of the album I think are perfectly represented here. It's a banger. I love this song.
Wild how she name drops the best album of 2016 in this song. Goodness.
It is
a controversial take, brother.
We haven't got there yet, but now is the best time to mention that the God, the one and only Christian Holden, is mentioned by specific name in the thank you notes for this album. As if there was any doubt that Michelle Zauner is the greatest artist of all time, she cites Christian Holden of the Hotelier as the direct inspiration.
Christian opened on their on the Jay Brecky Eskimo tour.
Yeah, that's right. Just the solo set.
Yeah. I think this song, the thing I wanted to say about Diving Woman, I can connect it back here, is I actually think they're like themes of kind of feeling inadequate on that song, and that's kind of what this song is about too, a little bit, especially in the second verse. And just like, I don't know, it's just fucked up. I think Diving Woman is a preamble for the record, really. Like, because there's a distinct narrative throughout every other song, and Diving Woman is just this, like, introduction from the other side.
Definitely. Yeah. I feel like Roadhead drops you, like, in medias res into, like, the story or, like, the thematic arc of this album, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is all over the place, like, sonically and tonally, but also not at all.
She makes it work. It's a really cohesive
it's extremely cohesive.
Like Boyish is kind of like a country song in a way, like that classic like.
Okay,
you know,
let's just
Roy Orbison, like.
Let's get hot onto Boyish, because good God, this song is
track. We saw it
gorgeous.
Live, and I was like, this is slow.
He was banging.
What's going on here?
Boyish still sticks out, even like listening to it in various qualities, various settings. Boyish sounds so crisp and so clean, even in not to put down the other songs, but there's something about Boyish that is like, this is quite possibly the most gorgeous thing that has ever entered my ears.
It's just perfectly crafted.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. The production, I don't know if the production is different. There's no like specific breakdown in the track listing, but it is immensely gorgeous. Like when those sweeping guitars come in, I can literally see them. I can see the guitars coming in.
The percussion on this track is so important, and it's like it's got so much personality to it. The fact that she decided to include like, I don't know, it reminds me of just like fucking.
Also, the
Spurs,
bassline is
like,
fucking filthy.
Oh my God. Boyish Bassline fan account is my new brand, because holy shit. It's just unbelievable. It's written perfectly. This is a perfect song. We've said that about a few songs in this album. But
my only regret is that she cut out. So in the Little Big League voice, there's a part where she's like, "We keep putting our clothes back on before the date is done," and they're like, "What's the point if it's just making out?" And she gets back into the chorus, and that was like the bridge, and it's not in the Japanese breakfast voice, which probably makes sense given
it's a good kind of distinction.
Given 3 years later, it's just a very different place for her. But I did love that bridge, and I kind of miss it. But
I love how she says that she like remade Boyish on this album specifically because she felt like the Little Big League version wasn't good enough. And it's like, Michelle, sweetie, you are doing amazing. Do not worry. Yeah, do not worry about it. Everything is perfect. The song did not need to be improved. I was of the belief that the song could not be improved, and then you just went ahead and goddamn did it. Unbelievable.
You know,
which is
how I look. That and the thing is, instead of it being like, which is just me not being able to do the song, it's like, leave, and then like the other leaves start coming in. You're like, whoa, Michelle, easy.
Calm down here. Does anyone have anything new to say about 12 Step? I was.
We should redo our.
Yeah.
Actually, I forgot that we kind of talked about this at the beginning.
This is like
12 Step makes me physically anxious.
That's a very fair.
I think what she describes in this song is something like, if you've ever loved someone and been in like a long-term relationship with someone, you've had fears that they're going to meet someone better than you. And she describes literally doing that and leaving that person. It's just like it stresses me out.
I need to take some more time with 12 Step because I'm in shock at how just objectively wrong I was. Jeremiah was like, before we recorded the podcast, Jeremiah was, I forget what he said. He was like, a hot take, 12 Step is like the most fuck me up song on the album. And I said, this is going to be a podcast because I think it's like the most fun song on here. I am objectively wrong. And then looking into the lyrics and stuff, it's just like, oh my God, she's done it again. Just once more.
I mean, how does she do both? It's amazing that she's able to do both of those things on every album, is have like the most fun and upbeat song simultaneously be the most like absolutely crushing.
It's because her emotions are real, and the emotions she's like
and we can talk about that
like
vocal take.
Actually, like
the vocal
really,
take is all one take, and it's just like she just doesn't stop.
Good.
And
Yeah, that was the first
solo
take
is-
she did, right?
Yeah.
Jesus.
It was the first
That's
take she
fucked
did.
up.
And like, it's just as a song. I mean, obviously it's just perfectly crafted, and it's the song that's probably the most. It's definitely the rock song in the album. You know, it's the one you're like, yeah. And you're
Reminds
like,
me of Crying. Has anyone listened to Crying on this particular?
Yeah.
Reminds me of the Fleeting Gates or whatever.
Yeah,
it's
Beyond
called.
It reminds me most of the first Little Big League album. That's definitely the most Little Big League song on the record, which is like good. But because
Yeah,
it's also
certainly.
like 12 Steps is like a bar in Philadelphia.
Yep.
And like, so you're like, all right, I like that throwback, but it means very progressive. It's very soft sounds. It meshes perfectly in the album. But as like its theme, and I think Lily, you mentioned earlier how like one thing that's really cool is that there's so many core themes. And I was like, you're exactly right. But I realized that what's happening, what I said about 12 Steps, about how it's like just this awful just situation for everyone involved. I realized that like it's a core theme when you look at it from the other two's perspectives, or especially Peter's perspective, not just her perspective, because this song is about begging for forgiveness, but not actually asking for forgiveness, just like saying, give me forgiveness. Like I need forgiveness.
The whole concept of like, blame, like where is blame placed in a situation like this? And
don't blame me. Yeah.
The idea that like there very well may not be a correct answer, like ever, and it's just like this is life at its finest.
And it's just this admission of, I mean, it's just aching, it just aches. It's just hard. And I mean, the lyrics, the chorus is, oh my gosh, the melody in the chorus, like it's just so good.
I can't believe I ever thought this song was fun.
It's a little bit lonely. It's a little bit like,
It's amazing that she's able to convey the complexity of a situation where simultaneously everybody and nobody is at fault. Like the song is so ambiguous, but not ambiguous.
Also,
there's just no resolution to it, and yet it's completely sasatisfying.
But like, also, even if you don't know the story, it's still powerful because with the name 12 Steps, it's like
stepping on my heart,
like alcoholism. And so if you look at it that way, if you look at it as like a
good lord, Jeremiah.
So the first time I listened to it, I thought it was about her dad like drinking a lot after her mom's death, and I was like, Fuck. Fuck.
What's wrong with me? All of these logical gaps in my just somehow not there. I am genuinely.
What happens is you hear like the main guitar riff and like the synth
Yes.
that goes with it, and you're like, woo!
And
then you just take a glance at the lyrics, or you just listen a bit harder, and it's just it's devastating. It's a really painful song.
Raucous guitars. That was my takeaway of this song. Is that it has raucous guitars. Let's get to Jimmy Fallon Big here for a second, which is when Michelle Zauner is playing Jimmy Fallon. I hope they find time for this because you know it has to happen because she's the best artist in the world. So put her on Jimmy Fallon. But this is like an interlude, but
yeah,
bigger.
It does feel like an interlude track, but not in like a yeah.
I mean, it's exactly as long as 12 Steps,
Yes.
but I think like the instrumental kind of lends it that like, hey, take a breather because from here on out, like I know that was tough. I know those guitars were raucous. From here on out, things are gonna get painful. So like have this sort of just like space. It's a great song. I think it's really fun. I like kind of the chorus and the vocal melodies on it. It's just good. It's a perfect breathing room. Going back to how that's paced.
And it's a slow build up musically.
Yep. I'll introduce this thought here because we're about to get into the rough stuff. I have a few things written down about how it has the same quality as Psychopomp as it's sort of unpredictable in its just ability to fuck you up, where it just keeps introducing these layers of just like going to places where you didn't expect or anticipate, even when you've heard it a bunch of times, just being like, oh, I forgot like that transition, or I forgot like that shift, I forgot that kind of like sound explosion. I also have starred my kind of key takeaway about this album is this entire album is that gif of Vince McMahon where he's watching the wrestler walk out and just like making those facial expressions like darting across the room, because that's how this album sort of feels to me. It's just like it just keeps going with this just like emotional.
It definitely just keeps ramping up. Like you can't believe that this streak is going to continue.
And so that's what I'm getting into here is I guess the final three real songs on this album are just
I never thought about Jimmy Fallon Big's like function in terms of that, but you're totally right. And that song is just like, it's a little step down, and it's like that's the moment where she tells you like, okay, we're 2/3 into this record, get ready because you're not gonna be ready.
Jimmy Fallon Big is actually like read the lyrics, like it's kind of a lonely song, and it's kind of like, I don't know, it's very wounded.
Yeah, well, it is.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'd also argue it's her most like purely shoegaze moment on the album.
Yeah. But like when Body in a Blade just fucking hits, goddamn, it just kind of starts is like that snap transition I've been talking about, but just it comes in with that guitar riff and the way it's just like so violently building to something, and you know what's coming. I think the songwriting on the chorus especially, where it's like the body is a blade that cuts path from day to day, something about while your brain is writhing and your blood is flowing. It's
what's the instrument? What's the instrument that she uses that she was making her husband donate, and then her producer was like, wait a minute, we should use this.
Oh, I don't remember.
I can't remember what it's called. She talks about it, but that's like the weird like the zwing, zwing, zwing noise in the second half of the song. Like Body as a Blade is just like, that's just a doozy. There's no if and or buts about it. It's a DOOZY.
Really fucking well structured.
She's a genius.
Bottom, it's just perfect. Like
she's a genius when it comes to pacing. Like yeah. Which is something I've been very outspoken about this on the podcast before, is that like if your album loses steam and it's too long, like that will actively disinterest me from your album. And so like when I see it's the Drake meme of like, you know, albums over 40 minutes, kind of giving it the shirk, but then I see an album under like 35 minutes and I guess sign me up for that. Give me one of those, please.
Something interesting is that I still don't know how long this album is.
It's 37
it's
minutes.
Infinite.
It's also
it always catches me off guard because it's so expansive and like fleshed out compared to Psychopomp, but then whenever it's done I'm like, oh, that's it? Like that That took no time at all.
To me. Like, I
it
have
doesn't.
the same thing with Psychopomp. Like, Psychopomp does not feel like 27 minutes. You know, it just goes, it just exists always and is forever when you're listening to it. And then when it's done, it's like, oh, right, that's the way it's you know, like, that's the way it needed to be. But, like, while it's happening, it could go on forever, and I'd be like...
The big thing about Psychopomp that, I mean, we really hammered home in quite a few places all over the place was just that, like, in 25 minutes, it's such a consuming, effective listen that, like, you know, is intensely hard to replicate, and, like, many more accomplished artists with longer albums have just come nowhere near close to the just sort of, like, weight that Psychopomp kind of accomplishes in such a short span, which is one of, like, the key takeaways of our stannery is the
cumulative impact of Psychopomp is truly astounding, that you're able to listen to an album in that amount of time, and at the end, every time I get this feeling of just like,
yeah, and how you can follow up. Nothing can follow up 777 except for In Heaven, like, whatsoever. It's just the natural conclusion to hear In Heaven again after you listen to 777. You go, maybe I'm going to listen to Psychopomp, like, I don't know, 5 more times today. I have
777 is one of the closers I need, like, a 2-minute window of silence for, just, like, out of respect. Like,
yeah.
Nothing comes after that.
Okay. We're going to do it. We're going to now talk about Till Death, which is...
Yikes.
Which is a song. To begin, I think let's start there.
First, let's look at the title. Notice how the title has 2 L's instead of the typical 1 L.
I just realized why. Holy shit.
Yeah. That is.
I would like to nominate.
That is a pun. It's a wordplay.
Can you explain that to me? Because I'm not picking up on it. I'm not understanding.
Like tilling. It's so instead of
well,
till.
No, I mean I understand what till means. I just don't understand the significance.
It's about how you essentially it's like work, I guess, is the best way to. It's about laying the groundwork, about back-breaking labor in the sun, and how when people say till death, like until death, it really means like you're tilling death, like you're just working towards it.
And you're mining it. Like, I think that's maybe part of it too, is the process of recovery is trying to, like, mine into death and dig into it and try and come out somewhere on the other side of it, which is definitely not an angle.
Try and make something out of it. Try and make
the opening line here. All our celebrities keep dying while the cruel men continue to win. Joins the ranking in my mind of just, like, the most 2017 lyrics that continue to be proven true over and over again. As just like yes, that is an all-encompassing line that loses no relevance. Joins the company of from the Jason Isbell and the 400 Sound album. Last year was a son of a bitch. And from LCD Sound System's Call the Police, the old guys are frightened and frightening to behold. As just like, those are the lines that define 2017. Yeah. But Michelle has one-upped them all here with that one. I mean, even
every single verse in the song, you're like, surely it's not going to get more like.
This is the one. This is the one where it really just.
Right? Because first you're like, all right, like. All our celebrities keep dying while the cruel men continue, and you're like, damn, that's an opening. And then the last line of the first chorus is like, don't turn away, I'm still awake, which is like,
when we hit Your Shape in the Dark, she's doing something like brand new with her voice that we had never heard before. And the first time I heard that was just like, this is that's too much, man.
She's even more emotive on this album with her voice than she is on Psychopomp, and that's just like that's like I don't understand how that was even possible. Like,
I don't deserve you, but I'm giving it my best.
Holy fucking shit!
I mean, yeah, anyone who has ever felt genuine human compassion in any capacity will have a hard time not being emotionally moved immensely by this song. It's just so.
It makes me feel good and it makes me feel bad.
It makes me feel so good and also so bad because it's like it's that feeling of just like, oh man, like being in love is great, but also just like life.
When she goes through the last 2 choruses, you can't like. You're just like, all right, surely it's gonna end with like repressed memories, anger, and bargaining. No, Then she goes on
We're
to
just gonna keep
string
going.
together PTSD, anxiety, genetic disease, and thanatophobia
Which,
in
of
like
course, as we know, is the psychological fear of death, which is like, oh, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
It just absolutely destroys me on the
it's just
inside.
like it's teach me to breathe, teach me to, it's just like this entire song is just this unbelievable testament to just love and just like
Yeah.
just recovery and just like the role of other people. And as she says in the next song, which we're gonna get to when we get to it,
So I'm going to throw out.
without good timing from her companions, and this is
Yeah.
part of it. And there's just so many. I think this song is probably, it's not the literal centerpiece, and it's not the, but this is the
This is the peak. It's the peak.
This is what the album builds to, for sure.
Yeah.
it's the what's the little piece in the, you know, the when you have a little arch, there's the little pieces, and there's the one stone right at the top. That's like, is it the keystone? Is that what that's called?
Keystone. Yeah,
This is the keystone of the album.
it certainly
It's
is.
just like
Here comes a lukewarm take that like this song is the peak, and so on a few of my listens, like This House was sort of underwhelming to me, and I was like, okay, like Till Death has literally destroyed me. There is nothing left. But on this most recent album, I like really listened to This House, and particularly the ending is just.
this house is strong. And also Till Death is.
It's such a
We've only talked about the lyrics on Till Death. We talk about the fact that Till Death could easily be on the album Kaput by Destroyer. You hear those horns, you hear those woodwinds. They're very subtle. They're kind of faded to the back. They're kind of mixing in and out. There's a little bit of reverb. At the end, it ends with like a little bit of like a horn outro. Like, what? Come on! Like, Michelle, you are a god. Like, what's happening here?
I think.
then-
Go ahead.
I'm done. I think.
I was gonna say, I think I remember Lily saying you really wanted to talk about This House specifically.
Or really good.
Yeah, I have. Man, This House. I think I just want to start. Like, this actually is a good segue into like my broader thoughts on this record. The opening 3 lines of This House are just like so like. This house is full of women like playing guitar, cooking breakfast, sharing trauma, doing dishes.
And where
There's such a quiet intimacy and power to those lines, and it's like I know those houses. There's such a like sanctity and a specialness to like all female units of living and their importance in regards to like mediating trauma and recovery and just like a sense of safety. And the fact that she's so plainly able to capture that here and like how integral those spaces can be to people's lives is just like a really incredible accomplishment lyrically. And that's like, to me, that's what this record is about the most, I think. Or this is, you know, all the facets of this record regarding marriage and stuff are true, but I think fundamentally like what lies at the bottom of this record for me is that this is about like experiences and sensations of otherness as a woman. Like, it's about feeling distanced from the world, whether that's through like your gender, your sexuality, your ethnicity. It's about what that does to you psychologically. And I think it's really in a very profound way about like the attempt to heal and recover from that. And I think what This House like displays most prominently in its lyrics and in combined with Till Death too, is that like this house, it's about the fact that there is no real recovery. There's only like scars healing over, but just the idea that there's some sort of like strength and consolation and really gratitude in that, and gratitude in just in the sense of like having survived your own experiences, which are so like visceral and profoundly affecting and traumatizing. And like, that's why I think like I'm still here or I'm still awake is maybe the most powerful line on Till Death for me, just because, you know, it speaks to that sense of longing, but it also speaks to this like sense of being alive and a sense of confusion about that as well, I think. And so, yeah, for me, this song just wraps up all those themes so perfectly. And, you know, I resonate with it on a very, very personal and specific level, you know. I mean...
Yeah, I think you're exactly
the last
right.
verse.
That's-
Like, well, I'm not the one I was then. My life was folded up in half. I guess I owe it to the timing of companions. I survived the year at all. Like, that is... that is
Yeah.
where my life is at right now. And so to hear that reflected in a song, and that this album is able to speak to me on such like a personal and powerful way about those things, is just, again, like I said at the beginning, it's not something I expected at all. And I think that's really what makes this album such a, vital and necessary document of that experience, because she is really speaking to things that I don't think have been reflected in music in this way before. And the fact that she's accomplishing it with such a level of craft and maturity and breadth of vision, it's really just astounding.
And you actually make a
That's-
really good point,
That's really
which is,
incredible.
and what you're talking about with othering was something that I'd like just like recognized and then like think that, but I hadn't like I hadn't really like, I was like, yeah, this is just like a thing that's, it's all over the album. And I never really thought of it as like the central theme. And I think you're exactly right. Because every single song, there's some amount of othering that happens. There's the othering for the diving woman as a woman of, what's the lyric? It's
the Korean
what's the wait? I want to be a woman of regiment.
Regiment.
Yeah.
Roadhead is all like all about othering. Machinist, othering. Planetary Ambience, othering in its own way. Soft Sounds from Another Planet, othering. Boyish, extreme othering. 12 Steps, the othering triple, like cubed. Just like everyone is getting othered in this song. Nothing good is happening. Jimmy Fallon Big is othering. Like the story is that the Little Big bassist left the band and to join a band that was going to be like Jimmy Fallon Big, and it's just that this thing's body is a blade, like death and othering. Till Death is the only point in the album where the othering isn't happening. It's Till Death is the only moment when like the othering, there is no othering happening, but it's all like the suggestions, all
I
the
think
stuff
like
that
I think
Till Death is about like being haunted by that othering,
Yes,
but at
yeah,
this point in
exactly,
the
yeah.
narrative of
It's-
the
it's
album,
the eye
like
of the
the othering is in the
storm.
rear view.
I think
It's
there's
the
I
eye
think
of the storm. So it's the moment of like healing, the moment of coming together again, and this house also kind of serves in that purpose. So yeah, I think you're exactly right, Lily. These are all like things I recognized and like had thought about, but hadn't really thought to. Because I was just like, yeah, like of course there can be stuff about othering. Like
a
we're
key
talking
point to
about
it
an
too.
Asian American like female artist who in the indie rock world who has like who like whose mom died and has just like had a lot like obviously there's this like this album's about othering, like we didn't even no, like you're exactly right. That is, I mean, it's not, it's, and that, yeah, because there's all the talk about disassociation and just the soft sounds from Another Planet. It is, I think you're exactly right. I think the album is about being an other.
And even an
in-
other from yourself, I think, or an
It's
other
like-
like within a friendship and being
Yeah.
on the outside. And again, like, so like I'm very obviously easily like able to relate to that aspect, like as a
Yes.
queer trans woman. But like, again, to go back to the just precision of her lyrical craft, like I said at the very beginning, the fact that she's able to, in my opinion, write an album so specifically about that, and that you guys are all still able to
So,
relate
yeah,
to it, is
so-
incredible.
I think there's othering that happens on every song in this album in a way that it touches almost everywhere. So like, let's say you're just coming off of a horrible breakup, easily find just solace in this. Coming off like she was coming off of a horrible death, like solace. There's you experience like, you can hear the othering, you can hear like what was happening to her, you can hear like the trauma, and you can just feel like, because that is a form of othering, just that isolation. Like we usually when we think of othering, we usually think of external forces of people doing things to you, or like internal forces in terms of like mental illness. There's the main two ways, but people don't really, I for one don't never really think of death as a form of othering, because it is an isolating,
Yeah.
like for the person who dies, it's all like quite literally, you're othered, you're gone, you're dead. But for
Yeah.
everyone who's left behind, I mean, there's still that. And then maybe for someone who is happily in a relationship, but like is doing all the relationship things, you will find stuff in here. For someone who is an other, who is, for example, like Lily, you're trans, like you identify so much with it. Someone who's like I don't know, like an immigrant, and feel like it just everything. There's so much to touch in this album, I think, and I think it's a lot like Psychopomp in that way, and I think it's an incredible follow up, and I think it's just.
I think like actually there's another way the first lines in this house can be interpreted that tie into that as well. I had always interpreted them as actually her alone, and kind of like not being able to reconcile like different aspects of herself and not feeling totally in control over all of it. And kind of it's reflecting on her waiting for her husband to come home and just kind of like, I don't know, like, I'm having trouble putting to words. Is anyone else like kind of picking up what I'm trying
Yeah, I
to
see
say?
what
Like,
you're saying.
yeah.
I'm picking up what you're putting
It's
down.
very like gender loaded sort of, and that
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is like that's the idea of like what gender roles have done to our society, is that like houses will have women in them, and women will cook breakfast and like make coffee and maybe play guitar or whatever it is, doing dishes. Women will share traumas and whatever, and it's that kind of like acknowledgement of like this is what kind of gender roles are. And what I wanted to touch on was like with the othering too, a lot of it is removed by time from those instances, and the album, to me, I get a lot of the idea of like reconciling these experiences and just kind of like the acknowledgement of like these are things that
Yeah,
happen,
that's
and like
exactly right.
things that have happened and experiences, and like moving forward from these experiences while also not necessarily like, you know, placing
Yeah, you're
blame,
exactly right. You're exactly
or
right.
like taking guilt from these
Time was
experiences.
the missing link in
Mhm.
this theme that we just hadn't touched on. Yeah, because like 12 Steps, it's all about. Just like so many of the songs are just about time, you know, and just move. And yeah, you're exactly right.
That's a component I've never thought about before, is that like
it's
a
like
major part of these songs is the temporal distance from these experiences of being like distanced. Like it's about the act and the space.
it's grappling with kind of like interpreting experiences, and how even like with context being removed from time, like how your interpretation of experiences can change, and like realizing like, hey, I was like a shitty person, or like, hey, there are things like I should have done differently, and just this sort of like super human, universally appealing idea of kind of the past and like experiences, and kind of just like dealing with all of these things that have happened, continue to happen, and then still somehow to kind of get back to it, tied up in this big cosmic theme of just like
And I think
universality.
this leads us to the last song in the album,
Yes.
which is called "Here Comes the Tubular Bells," which at this point in both our discussion and in the album is probably the most important song on the album.
I kind of wish. Let me run a take by you guys first.
Okay.
I kind of wish the album had been called "Here Come the Tubular Bells." But this song was not, separated on the album, and was just the natural, because it flows so well from this house.
That's true.
But hearing those tubular bells would just be like, man, there they are. Here they come. They've finally done it. Like I was told this whole time, this album took me on a journey, but like there was always this promise, right?
That the tubular bells coming.
That things will.
There they are.
Things will be pleasant, and then there they are at the end, and it's just sort of like, man, what a fucking journey this album took me on, because that's really what it is.
Wild how this album captures the full range of human emotion.
Yes, it's such a comprehensive document, and what I love about the Tubular Bells is that as much as they're there, they're equally not there. Like they feel like a fading memory. And one of the things that astounds me about this closer is that I never notice when it ends. Like this album never feel like it ends. It just fades out, and I don't know how she did that. That like
well, when we were listening to it for the first time, Jeremiah, remember we had no idea how long Here Come the Tubular Bells were, and we were like, we listened to it, and then it ended, and we were like, that was like 30 seconds.
Yeah, and then immediately like 80s music came on, and I was like, yeah, that was gonna happen.
We were like, what the hell's going on? What the hell's going on? Like, because we were like, we really had no idea what was going to happen going into Here Come the Tubular Bells, and it was like, it's just this sort of like,
and I think I want to
fading outro.
I think my ultimate thought with Here Comes Tubular Bells, especially after this conversation, just in general, just listening to the album, is that, of course, in the little intro, which we read earlier in the book, she mentions that it was originally going to be called "Here Come the Tubular Bells," which is kind of an ironic title because it's just so like depressing. But hearing the tubular bells come at the end and with that name, and because it's not the name of the album, suddenly the irony has kind of been wrung from it, you know? Because at the start you're like, oh, it's kind of, but like it's just such an emotional gauntlet, and it makes such a trip down the rabbit hole that when you hear the tubular bells, you're like, Thank God. Like
Yes.
it's like when you're deep in a cave in Pokemon and you use your escape rope or something. You know, it's like getting to the evac zone. It's like in an XCOM mission when like you realize that you've lost like your medic and like 2 guys and you're like, oh shit, we gotta bail. And like the thin men are coming in around you just unloading plasma shots and someone gets crit and everybody's at like 1 health and you finally make it to the landing zone, you evac and you lose the mission but you saved 3 of your troops' lives. Like that's what Here Come the Tubular Bells feels like.
It makes such perfect sense in context, being that how the album was originally going to be called Here Come the Tubular Bells, and because it was sort of conceived as an album about marriage, and then going through like writing and recording, realizing that like, no, you can't just write an album about marriage because it's going to inherently be loaded with just like so much more, and is about, I guess, Soft Sounds from Another Planet, which is just, as we've sort of deciphered and decided for ourselves, this massive concept of the human experience and the gamut of love and emotion, and just like in this cosmic we are all connected sense. That's just like, of course it couldn't just be an album about marriage. Like nothing ever is so simple.
And I just realized something really powerful about the way like the Tubular Bells come full circle, like thinking back to that like sort of preamble note we read, like her marriage was the last thing that happened before her mother died. And
That's
so
true.
Suddenly at the end of all this, we have like the sound of that wedding coming back in a way. And it's almost like, you know, if you want to dissect both albums, it's like Psychopop is the incident and Soft Sounds is the attempt at recovery. And so when the Tubular Bells finally return, it's like, it's that sense of the self you were before, like coming back to you in a way. It's a sensation of like finally feeling like human again and having come out
cleanse,
of this trauma. You know? Yeah, exactly. It's a very cathartic
baptism.
moment.
It's a baptism. There we go. And it works with like the you know, because bells are in churches. You know, we can make that metaphor.
It's very loaded. Let's go ahead, team here. If maybe you weren't aware from the past, I don't know, Jesus Christ, an hour now maybe. Do we recommend this album? Do we recommend Soft Sounds from Another Planet by Japanese?
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me play you guys my thoughts.
Should we
wait, hold on. Wait.
Oh, sure. Let's whip out head ratings.
Wait. Hold on a minute. Give it just a second. Give it just a moment. This is really important. There's nothing. We're just having a good time. We're all just sitting here.
Let's have a few
minding our own business.
Let's have some brief radio silence here.
Yeah.
To get the official Indieheads podcast endorsement of Soft Sounds from Another Planet.
Nothing is amiss. Here's what I think about Soft Sounds from Another Planet.
Should I just boot Jeremiah from the car?
So a glowing recommendation all around. I think there's really nothing else to be said. If you've made it this far, our sincerest thanks for sticking through it with us.
Dry Bowser just hopped on the beat.
We hope you enjoy the album Soft Sounds from Another Planet by Japanese Breakfast. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Indieheads podcast. We'll be back soon-ish, probably, I don't know, to talk about Arcade Fire or maybe the Billboard charts or something like that. This is going to be like episode 97 of our podcast.
Let's just make it episode 100 and just cut let's just cut it to 100. Just skip those 3.
I think we did our Twitters beforehand. We've all been introduced and have grown closer together through this lengthy experience and very emotionally draining experience, dissecting what very well could be the best album of 2017, Soft Sounds from Another Planet by Japanese Breakfast. Signing off, I guess, everyone.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
10 out of 10. Album of the year.
It's 10 out of 10.
Yep.
10 out of 10.
She's done it again.
10
Buy her album.
Again.
Support her. Thanks everybody. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Or day, depending on when you're listening.